Jeremiah Johnson is one of those films that feels quiet at first, but the more you think about it, the deeper it becomes. Released in 1972 and starring Robert Redford, the movie tells the story of a man who leaves society behind and tries to live alone in the mountains. On the surface, it looks like a simple survival story. But underneath, it is about loneliness, loss, and the struggle between peace and violence. What makes this film special is not just what it shows, but also what it chooses not to show. Many viewers have noticed that the movie feels different from other westerns. It is slower, quieter, and more thoughtful. Over the years, people have become curious about how the film was made and what might have been changed along the way. One of the most interesting parts of its history is a scene that was completely removed before the film was released. This deleted scene could have changed the entire tone of the story. To understand why it was cut, it is important to first look at where the story came from and how it was shaped into the film we know today. Before it became a movie, Jeremiah Johnson was inspired by the real-life figure John Jeremiah Garrison Johnston, a man whose story was much darker than what appears on screen. He lived in the 1800s and became known as a mountain man who survived in the wild American frontier. Over time, stories about him grew into legend. Some people called him Liver-Eating Johnson, a name that shows just how violent those stories became. According to these tales, his life changed after a terrible tragedy. His wife was killed, and he began a long and brutal journey of revenge. These stories included acts of extreme violence, including hunting down enemies over many years. However, historians are not sure how much of this is true and how much is exaggerated. Like many figures from the Old West, his story became larger than life. When filmmakers decided to turn this legend into a movie, they knew they could not show everything exactly as it was told. Instead, they chose to create a softer and more human version of the character. This decision shaped the entire tone of the film and is one reason why it feels more emotional than violent. The process of turning this rough legend into a film took many years and involved several creative people. The movie was based on two books, Crow Killer and Mountain Man, which already presented different versions of the story. Writers worked on the script many times, trying to find the right balance between truth and storytelling. One of the key writers was John Milius, who helped shape the film's strong and simple dialogue. He wanted the characters to speak in a way that felt real and natural, like people who lived in the wilderness. The film was also directed by Sidney Pollack, who had a clear vision for the story. He did not want a loud, action-filled western. Instead, he wanted something quieter and more personal. This choice affected every part of the film, from the pacing to the way scenes were shot. It also influenced which parts of the story were included and which were left out. Even before filming began, the project went through many changes, including different actors being considered for the main role. All of these decisions slowly shaped the film into something very different from the original legend. When Robert Redford finally took on the role of Jeremiah Johnson, he brought a unique approach to the character. He wanted the performance to feel real, not like typical Hollywood acting. To prepare, he trained in survival skills, learned how to live in the wilderness, and even changed his physical appearance. He grew a beard, lost weight, and spent time understanding how a man like Jeremiah would move and behave. This level of dedication helped make the character feel believable. During filming, Redford did many of his own stunts and worked in harsh conditions. The movie was shot in real locations, including mountains and forests, where the weather was often cold and difficult. The crew had to deal with snow, freezing temperatures, and long days without comfort. These conditions made filming very challenging, but they also added to the realism of the movie. When viewers watch the film, they can feel that the environment is real, not created on a studio set. This commitment to authenticity became one of the film's strongest qualities. The story shown in the final version of Jeremiah Johnson focuses on a man trying to find peace in nature but being pulled back into violence. At first, Jeremiah learns how to survive with the help of other mountain men. Slowly, he builds a life for himself and even finds a sense of family. For a short time, it seems like he has escaped the troubles of the world. However, this peace does not last. After a tragic loss, he is forced into conflict again. The film shows this change in a quiet and emotional way. Instead of focusing on large battles or dramatic action, it stays close to Jeremiah's personal journey. This is very different from the original legend, which is filled with extreme violence and revenge. The filmmakers chose to suggest these darker elements without fully showing them. This decision makes the story feel more thoughtful and less shocking. It also allows viewers to connect with the character on a deeper level. By keeping the focus on emotion rather than action, the film creates a lasting impact. One of the most fascinating parts of the film's history is the scene that was removed before release. This was not a small or unimportant moment. It was a fully filmed sequence that lasted several minutes. In this scene, Jeremiah meets a group of U.S. cavalry soldiers who are hunting Native Americans. They try to recruit him as a scout, but he refuses. The situation begins to build toward a possible conflict. On its own, the scene was well made and added more action to the story. However, when it was shown in test screenings, something felt wrong. The scene changed the focus of the film. Instead of staying centered on Jeremiah's personal struggle, it started to feel like a larger political story about war and conflict. Director Sidney Pollack believed this went against the tone he wanted. He wanted the film to remain quiet and personal, not broad and dramatic. Because of this, he made the difficult decision to remove the entire scene, even though it had already cost time and money to create. The decision to cut this scene shows how carefully the film was shaped. Many movies keep large scenes because of the money spent on them, but this was not the case here. Pollack believed that every part of the film needed to support the main idea. If something distracted from that, it had to go. By removing the cavalry scene, the story stayed focused on Jeremiah's inner journey. The audience sees his loneliness, his loss, and his struggle to survive, without being pulled into a larger political conflict. This choice helped keep the film's unique tone. It also made the story feel more timeless. Instead of being tied to a specific historical issue, it became a more universal story about human experience. Some people believe the deleted scene would have added excitement and made the film more traditional. Others think it would have taken away from what makes the movie special. This debate continues even today, showing how important that decision was. In the end, Jeremiah Johnson became a film that stands out because of its restraint. It does not try to show everything. Instead, it carefully chooses what to include and what to leave out. The removed scene is a perfect example of this approach. By cutting it, the filmmakers protected the quiet, emotional core of the story. Over time, the film gained more appreciation and became known as a classic. Its simple style, strong performance, and thoughtful storytelling continue to connect with audiences. The mystery around the deleted scene only adds to its legacy. It reminds us that sometimes what is not shown can be just as important as what is. The story of Jeremiah Johnson is not just about a man in the mountains. It is also about the choices made behind the camera and how those choices shape the final result. That is what makes the film, and its missing scene, so fascinating to explore even today. Another important part of understanding Jeremiah Johnson is looking at how the film was actually made in such difficult conditions. Unlike many Hollywood movies of that time, this film was not created on comfortable studio sets. Instead, director Sidney Pollack and actor Robert Redford insisted on filming in real locations. They chose the mountains of Utah, where the landscape could naturally show the harsh and lonely world of the story. This decision gave the movie its powerful and realistic look, but it also created many challenges. The crew had to work in freezing temperatures, often high in the mountains where there were no proper roads or facilities. They had to carry heavy equipment through snow and rough terrain, sometimes walking long distances just to reach a filming spot. At night, temperatures would drop below freezing, and many people had to sleep in tents or near fires to stay warm. These conditions were not easy, and they tested everyone involved in the production. However, this struggle also helped the film feel more real. When viewers watch the movie, they are not seeing actors pretending to be cold, they are actually cold. This level of realism added depth to every scene and made the survival story feel believable in a way that few films achieve. The difficult filming conditions also affected the performances in a powerful way. Robert Redford did not just act like a man living in the wilderness, he tried to truly become that man. He spent time learning survival skills, such as hunting, building fires, and tracking animals. He even allowed his body to change, losing weight and developing a rough appearance that matched the character. During filming, he often performed physically demanding scenes himself instead of using a stunt double. There were moments when he stood in freezing water, walked through deep snow, and endured strong winds for the sake of realism. In one well-known moment, his beard became covered in real ice during a snowstorm because the director wanted it to look natural. These experiences were not just for show, they helped Redford understand the character on a deeper level. His performance feels quiet and natural because he was truly experiencing some of the hardships his character faced. This kind of dedication is rare, and it is one reason why his role in the film is still remembered as one of his best. The physical struggle became part of the storytelling, blending reality and fiction together in a very effective way. Another interesting aspect of the film is how it uses silence in simple moments instead of constant action. Many Western films from that era were filled with gunfights, fast movement, and loud music. However, Jeremiah Johnson takes a very different approach. It allows scenes to breathe, giving the audience time to think and feel what the character is going through. This style may seem slow to some viewers, but it is actually one of the film's greatest strengths. By focusing on small details, such as the sound of the wind or the movement of animals, the movie creates a strong sense of atmosphere. The audience begins to understand how isolated Jeremiah is and how difficult his life has become. This quiet style also makes the emotional moments more powerful. When something tragic happens, it feels real and meaningful because the film has taken the time to build that connection. If the deleted cavalry scene had remained in the movie, it might have disrupted this careful balance. A large, action